Hi all, welcome to K21 Talk Show. We had promised you that this week will be a very busy week and then we'll try and get as much as 5 guests. We are absolutely on track. We caught up with someone from Delhi Capitals yesterday who gave us a lot of insight about what happens behind the scenes. So today's guest, personally he's very special for me. So he started off as a left arm spinner in the domestic circuit, and then he actually ended his career as one of the most prolific batsmen in the domestic circuit. He ended his he ended his career as one of the most prolific batsmen in the domestic circuit. He represented four teams, and then he represented four teams, nearly 10,000 runs. He ended his career with an average of 53. He had a slightly low-profile international career, but he still exited the international arena with a 50 to his name. So post his playing career, it's been nothing short of excellent. He's worked with two IPL teams and he's going to be working with a third team whenever IPL 2020 happens. Internationally, he worked with Australia A in 2015, and then they got impressed with him. They started using him on subcontinental tours, and later on elevated him to an assistant coach status. I think he has joined us. Let me invite Sridhar and Sriram. Sriram, vanakkam. Sriram, I'm just introducing you, saying how in your international career, it might have not been as big as how you liked it, but your post-playing career coaching has been absolutely excellent. Like you actually proving to become one of the most established coaches in the industry. So very
Probably that's
happy to.
because so probably that's because of why my international cricket has not been taken off. Like that's why I'm the coach I am today. So I have no
Absolutely.
regrets.
Absolutely. Very happy to host you, Sriram. So let's jump into the interview. So நான்
Thank
ஃபர்ஸ்ட்
you, sir.
போறேன். ஸோ நான் ஓரளவு ஃபர்ஸ்ட் டிவிஷன் கிரிக்கெட்லாம் ஃபாலோ பண்ணுவேன். ஸோ like at MRF and all, like you're one of the all-time Globetrotters legends. So like how did that start? Like where did you start your cricket career in the first division league and all?
Division, I think that time a lot of people started with Reserve Bank of India. So Reserve Bank of India was a team that promoted a lot of youngsters. So Sharad started with Reserve Bank. I can name a lot of cricketers who started with Reserve Bank and then went on to play lots of first class cricket. I was one of the very lucky few of that time. I think P.S. Mohan was one of the coaches in Santom Higher Secondary School. So he got
Yeah.
me into the Reserve Bank team, S. Madhu. I mean, a lot of people who I have high regards for. I think that was Shiva Ravi was one of the my teammates at that time. So a lot of people who have I have high regards for. I think I was very fortunate to play first division at the age of 15. So not many people did that. So I
Absolutely.
played for, and Reserve Bank was an excellent team. They had no agenda of winning the championship. Their only agenda was to stay in the first division and promote youngsters. So that they were very clear in their objective. So I think that gave me ample opportunities. I knew I would never be dropped. I knew I would bowl a lot of overs. At that time, I was predominantly a left-arm spinner, so I knew I would bowl a lot of overs, and I had scores of experience around me. Yasmadhu had played so much position, central zone, was a leg spinner who used to bowl at the other end. So I was under great guidance. So I think Reserve Bank was excellent for any youngster. Today I don't know where Reserve Bank are in the league today, but I think in those days I think they were a great stepping stone for any youngster. And then I had a very good season. I got 40 wickets in that first division season in 8 matches, which I think was a big thing in those days. And then T.A. Shekhar sir from MRF came home. So he came home along with Ashish Kapoor's father. So Ashish used to play for
Another Globetrotters legend.
another Globetrotters legend, and he was young at that time. He was only about 21 or 22. So his father came to my house along with Shekhar sir and said, "See, look, I've entrusted Ashish to play for MRF. So I would like you to do that. Have the great confidence in MRF. They're very good, and I think it was a good decision in hindsight. If I look back, I think I played about 13, 15 years for a Globetrotter. It was a great journey from Senthil, N. Gautam, Shekhar, Ashish, Sanjay. In those days, I mean, it was great for me as a youngster coming through. It was a great learning curve, and I think that was a very good era in Tamil Nadu cricket.
Yeah. So நீங்க சொன்ன மாதிரி, so you had Sharath at RBI, and then that entire bunch went on to play for Tamil Nadu also. Like your Tamil Nadu team was filled with like very stylish left-handers. நீங்க, Ramesh, Sharath, Badani,
At one
like
point of time, we had about 7 left-handers in the team. So Robin, Raman, myself, Sharath, Hemang. I mean, W.D. Balaji Rao played a few games. He was a left-handed batsman as well. So I clearly remember we had about 7 left-handed. Divasa was the only right-hander I could remember in the middle order. So it was a team packed with left-handers. Very unique team.
it's unheard of now. So still that one season, no, the 99-2000 season when he scored about 1,000 runs, 500s, and then like obviously you got noticed, and then Hindu awarded you with some domestic cricketer year award, and then you played for India. So, but Anna, வந்து you were நீங்க சொன்ன மாதிரி நீங்களே சொன்ன மாதிரி you looked at yourself as a batting all rounder, but probably the Indian team looked at you as a bowling all rounder. So, and you had a lot of there are a lot of people at that time. So you had Hemang, who was also trying for that spot. Yuvraj Singh was there, and India were trying a couple of other all-rounders in Sodhi and all. So how hard was it to get into the Indian team back then, on the 2000 era?
For me, I think that year which I played for India, there was a lot of talk about Tamil Nadu wanting to win the Ranji Trophy. So I remember very clearly there's this cricketer called Madana Gopa. I mean, very good cricketer. Yeah. So he told me that if we have any chances of coming to the final, Sri, you have to score 1,000 runs this year. Otherwise, we are not going to make it to the final. So I don't know what he thought of or how he said that. It was the starting of the season, and that time to me 1,000 runs was unheard of. Like only W. Raman had got 1,000 runs before that, and so I had never ambitions or aspirations or even a belief that I could score 1,000 that season. So, but he said that to me. I remember even today he said that, Sri, if we have to make it to the Ranji final, you have to score 1,000 runs. So I just brushed it off. I said, Ma, what are you talking? 1,000 runs, impossible. So I laughed it. But the seasons unfolded that, I just kept going and going. It was one of those purple patches that you get as a cricketer. And I was very fortunate to hit that purple patch. And, I was very fortunate to have played for India. More than the Hemang Badani and Yuvraj Singh and Mohammad Kaif, I think like they were stalwarts like Sachin, Saurav, Rahul, Lakshman, who were like you can't break through that lineup. So I was very fortunate to have played for India. I consider myself very fortunate coming through that era of the kind of batsmen that India were producing. To have played also for the country in whatever format, I think I consider myself very fortunate. But one of the very big disappointments I still have and I nurture and I love to do something about is to win Ranji Trophy with Tamil Nadu. I think we came so close so many times we couldn't win it. We had an excellent team for different reasons. We could not win the Ranji Trophy, and that's really has been one of my sort
Biggest
of
regrets.
not regrets, but I would say one of my dreams was to be a part of a Ranji Trophy winning team, and hasn't yet. I haven't given up on that dream yet, but
You can still
still,
coach. You
yeah,
can still win it as a coach.
I can, but you don't know. So I mean, so it's something that has been with me for a long time. And to give back something to your state, I think is special. And having even coming through the Australian journey, one thing I have learned from Justin Langer is giving something back to your state. He always says, whatever big player, whatever big coach you are, you must make sure that your knowledge reaches more people. The knowledge gets trickled down to the lower levels, whatever you've learned. And he still does that. He would still go to Western
Local club.
Australia games, Western Australia games, and he would still have great rapport with the boys that he has coached. So I think that's a big lesson that I have learned along the journey.
Yeah. Okay. So, Sriram, my next question was that only, sorry, your post-playing career. So, obviously, you told us about the relationship that you had with Shekhar sir, and then you went to Delhi Devils, where you had Shekhar sir on there, so you worked with him, and then you've done with Punjab. Whenever IPL 2020 happens, you'll be working with the third IPL team. So, like, நீங்க வந்து என்ன, like when did you decide that you were going to get into coaching, or நீங்க வந்து நான் கோச்சிங் தான் பண்ண போறேன் வேற எதுவுமே பண்ண போறது முன்னாடியே டிசைட் பண்ணிட்டீங்களா?
The coaching happened by chance, actually. For me, like, uh, I went through a period where I signed up for the ICL. So I could not play cricket in India. So I used to live 6 months in England and 6 months in New Zealand.
You played for Scotland, some
Yeah, I
Scotland.
played for Scotland, but I used to go and play a lot of club cricket in England. And I literally did 6 months in England and 6 months in New Zealand because India would not allow us to play any domestic cricket here. So that time, in order to get a visa, you had to get a coaching certificate. Otherwise, you were not getting a work permit to go to England or New Zealand. So
Okay.
they were not bothered about what you played. They were bothered about what you can bring to their community, which was the coaching skill. And so my club said, boys, if you want a visa, you get qualified and I'll help you to get into the ECB level 2, level 3. So I said, okay, I needed the visa at that time more than anything. So I went and jumped on the course, and then because to complete my level 3, it was mandatory to do about 100 or 120 hours of coaching in the community. So I used to, in England, when I was there for 6 months, or in New Zealand, I used to coach in the local schools, in the local colleges. So every week, the weekends only, they used to play matches, Saturday and Sunday. So Monday to Friday, I was literally free. So all I did was I used to do my fitness and go to schools and coach in the afternoon. So that was a great learning for me. And I had some very good coaches at the grassroots level who would come along with me for those sessions. And I would initially not do the sessions. I would just observe and watch. And those coaches, I mean, today coaches are only recognized by the level at which they coach. But actually, the great coaches are the ones who coach at the grassroots level.
Correct.
To keep kids entertained for 45 minutes in a session requires amazing planning and amazing adaptability. So these are things that I learned from those coaches, how you plan a session, how you adapt on the go. Child's attention span would be very little. He would want to do different things. So you have to keep like 30, 40 kids engaged. Nobody should keep talking. Nobody should have groups. You should create activities where everybody is involved. So I think I learned a lot observing. I mean, they were not great coaches today. You don't know their names, but I think from those coaches I learned a lot along the journey. And coaching just happened, and then I realized that I was good in that. I enjoyed. If somebody did well, who I coached, I got a lot of sort of satisfaction out of it. So that's why I think that's what got me into coaching.
So and this Australia journey, how did it start? If I'm right, in 2015 you started off with Australia A, and then Australia actually won the series in India, which is
No, actually, it's a dream story. I mean, it's a very interesting story to share. What happened? I came through the ranks. I'm very glad about my coaching journey because I coached at the grassroots level. I did schools, I did colleges, I did clubs. I coached MRF. I coached the Tamil Nadu under-23 team. Lot of people, what they do, they give up playing and straight away go into coaching at a higher level. So they get caught without the experience of going through. Like it's like playing. You got to play under 15, under 17, Ranji Trophy. You can't straight away play for India.
It's a process.
I think
You have to follow.
coaching is also the journey. Whoever you may be, you have to go through the journey of coaching through the ranks. All the great coaches today have come up through the ranks. They've coached at all multiple levels. And so I'm very glad that had happened. And once I was like coaching the Tamil Nadu under-23 team, I got this opportunity from Gary Kirsten. I think Lakshman, VVS Lakshman and Anil Bhai recommended my name along with Shekhar sir to Gary Kirsten, that he was looking for a domestic Indian coach to sort of have as his assistant. So I think Lakshman, Anil Bhai and Shekhar sir put in a word for me. And then he called me all of a sudden. He said, hi Sriram, this is Gary, how are you? I would like to interview you for a role. And I said, okay, I'm happy to do that, Gary. And then I think he liked me, and then he got me on board to Delhi Daredevils. And that's how the journey started. And in Delhi Daredevils that year, we had two Australian cricketers, Marcus Stoinis and Travis Head. So both were not playing in the 11. So they went up to Gary and said, we're not playing, so we want to do some extra training. And that particular year, Australia A was supposed to come to India on a tour. So they said that we want to use this time to learn to play about India, play in India. So Gary said, you can take Sriram and Sriram will work with you guys on how to play in the subcontinent. So what used to happen was we used to stay back after practice, and we used to do our own practice. The team would leave to the hotel, but we, two or three of us, would stay back with a few net bowlers, or I myself would throw, and we would practice playing spin, talk different things about playing in India. And so once we were in Delhi, what happened? We finished practice and we were taking a auto tuk-tuk back to our hotel, and the auto broke down halfway. So we decided to walk. So we were walking, and then we
Okay.
sat in a coffee shop, myself and Marcus Stoinis, only two of us. So we sat in a coffee shop, and Stein was reflecting and saying, Sri, I'm really feeling confident about my game, and I've improved, and it's been a great journey for both of us. And I casually just made the statement, you know what, I should do this for Australia.
Hmm.
And then he said, what a great idea. And he said, write to Greg Chappell and Troy Cooley. And then he said, use my name as reference. So I wrote, I knew Greg. Greg had coached India before, so I knew Greg. So I had written to him saying that I would like to do this for Australia. It's something I'm very passionate about, and is there an opportunity? And to my surprise, I got a reply the next day. I wrote in the night, and the morning when I woke up, it was already afternoon in Australia. So he had
Correct.
already replied to me saying, Sri, great to hear from you. How are you doing? I'm so glad you're into coaching. So we are coming in July. We would love to catch up, blah, blah, blah. And then I kept in contact with him, and they came in June, and I did a few sessions for the team. And Troy Cooley was the head coach of the Australian A team at that time. And Troy was someone who I knew very well as well. So Troy goes back to my MRF days with Dennis Lilly. Troy used to come
MRF
with,
connection. Yeah.
yeah. So I knew Troy, and Troy just said that we can't guarantee anything, but just do a couple of sessions for us. So I just came. I did a few sessions. Usman Khwaja was on that tour. Peter Hanscom was on that tour. Uh, Cameron Bancroft was on that tour. So there were a lot of, and these guys liked the way I was working, and so Usman was the captain. So Uzi said we would like to
Correct.
have Sri for the whole series. So Uzi said we would like to have him for the whole series, and then the series happened, and India had a very good side. Virat Kohli played, Cheteshwar Pujara played, Rahul Dravid was the coach of the India A team. So it was a very strong India A side, and the Australian team beat them in India in Chennai. So it was
Correct.
a big thing for them. And then the news went on to Darren Lehman, and I got a call from Darren Lehman saying, would you like to do this for the Australian team? So that's how the journey started. It was almost a meteoric rise, but it started with a very casual conversation. So you never know how life
One
changes.
casual email changed it. All thanks to the
Casual
auto fellow.
remark. Absolutely. You never know.
No, and
If that
thanks to the
auto
auto
hadn't,
fellow.
if it hadn't broken down, no chance, maybe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You should go meet him again. So, same jokes apart. So, Ninga Sonamadri. So, that 2015 you started off with A tour, and then the you were part of subcontinent tours initially. When you were playing Asian teams, and then like now you've been elevated to an assistant coach. So one thing is like you are one outsider, as in like a non-Australian, and then Graham Hick is also there. So generally Australians don't encourage a lot of overseas coaches or overseas consultants coming their way. So initially, what was the acceptance levels like? Like எல்லாரும் ஓப்பனா accept பண்ணாங்களா, or were they initially slightly skeptical? Like how did you build? How long did it take for you to build the trust? Saying, but like how long did that process take?
I think it's an ongoing process. So it's even continues even today. But I was very fortunate that guys like Khwaja, Hanscom, Stoinis, Travis Head, Cameron Bancroft, it was like a good batch that went on to play, and it I sort of transitioned with them. So I had already forged the relationship with them. So, and that sort of percolated, and those guys started speaking to the Steve Smiths and the David Warners and said, this guy has helped me a lot. So that sort of eased me into it. And then I think both my head coaches like Darren Lehman and now Justin Langer, they both are amazing, very open. I mean, even Darren Lehman at that time, I could go and say anything to him, and he would never dismiss the idea. He would always give it a thought, and if there was merit to it, he would definitely take it. So the thing I have learned is to be myself and to continue to think like an Indian. Like I think it's very important that I bring a different perspective into their dressing room. It is not that I bring the same perspective as an Australian coach. I bring a different perspective to their dressing room. I see things maybe a little differently to what they have grown up seeing. We play
Because your
differently.
school of thought is different. I
Yeah,
mean,
our cricketing culture in India is a little different to theirs. So I think I've tried to maintain that point of difference, and I've always continued to be myself. So I think that's helped me a lot.
so all of us have seen the test, the Amazon Prime documentary. So நீங்க சொல்றீங்கல்ல different perspective. So all one line that actually stuck with me for that against Pakistan in UAE, day 4, saying like you walking up and then saying, "See, we have nothing to lose. The pressure is on Pakistan. Let's go and do it." It is. நீங்க சொல்ற different perspective was very very evident. Like it's. I mean, what was the?
True.
How did you say it? Like,
It is
how did you
true
say it?
because I've spoken to guys like Ashwin and Jadeja. They say the hardest thing is to win the game on the 5th day because the expectations are so much. The pressure is on the bowling team to get 10 wickets, especially when in turning tracks. The margin of error is little for a spinner, and you expect the spinner to get 10 wickets. Like you, the pace bowlers will say,
Yazir
it's
Shah
not my
or
job, it is your job. Yazir Shah or Bilal Asif, I think he was making his debut.
Bilal Asif.
So
Yeah,
yeah. So Bilal Asif was making his debut, and for someone like Ashwin and Jadeja, who had so much experience, and still we drew the test in Ranchi. I remember that test in Ranchi that we drew, and I said the same thing happened. Like we were 3 down at the end of the day, and then Hanscom and Sean Marsh played out the whole day the next day.
Yeah.
So Sean Marsh and Hanscom played out
Correct.
the whole
Maxwell had
day.
scored
The
in the
next
first
day,
innings.
Maxwell scored 100 in the first innings, but in the second innings, Hanscom and Sean Marsh played out the whole day. So it is not easy for a spinner in the 5th day, especially in the subcontinent when the wicket slows down, the pace in the wicket dies out. So if you have a good defense, you can definitely survive. And defense was something we had always been reiterating on that tour to have a good defense. And our guys had worked extremely hard on working on that defense. So that's what I thought, that if we stick to our process and stick to our beliefs, the pressure is on them. We have nothing to lose. Everybody thinks we have already lost the test match. But if we have a session without losing a wicket, to get 6 wickets in 2 sessions is never easy.
Absolutely, yeah. The pressure
So,
increases.
and that's what. And I have been a bowler and I've played at different levels as a spinner, trying to win the game on the last day. It is something you're trying every time. Like bowling in the first innings, you're bowling to sort of set the pressure. You're bowling to bowl dots. You're bowling to build pressure. Whereas in the second innings, you're bowling to get them out. And so your margin of error, you're trying a lot more, which means the batsman gets more scoring opportunities. So if you have a sound defense, I think you can score, and that's what I was trying to say. So luckily the result went that, but it's a different way of thinking. Yes.
We absolutely loved watching it. That particular thing, it still stands. It's still there in front of my eyes. I absolutely loved watching it. So, Sriram, you mentioned Ranchi 2017. Go back 2 test matches before. Pune 2017. I was there working as part of Hindi commentary, as part of Hindi broadcast. So day 2, India were 93 for 4. Lunch, 3 for 93 or something. Lunch. You and Stephen O'Keefe did not go for lunch. You came into the field. Stephen O'Keefe stayed in the field. You both bowled in the practice pitch, the one next to the main wicket. You bowled, and then for some reason they changed ends. Nathan Lyon and Keefe were bowling in opposite ends. After that, they changed ends. O'Keefe took 6 wickets in the next 25 balls. India were bowled out for only some 10 runs after that. Now tell us that story.
This is amazing. Again, I was talking about the pressure of the spinner. Even the Australian spinners, when they come to India, face tremendous pressure. The quicks say, it's not my job. I'll do it in Australia. But when we come to India, you have to do it. It's the spinner's job. The wicket is standing. So the pressure that he faced to sort of get wickets was unbelievable. Nathan Lyon is very experienced. He's done that before. But Stephen O'Keefe was new to the team. He was under tremendous pressure, and he's a very intense sort of character. He loves a challenge. He sort of prides his performance. So he's that sort of character. So he came in for lunch. He had bowled about 7 overs for 21. I remember very
Yeah,
clearly,
and no
and
wicket.
no wickets. And so at lunch, everybody had gone for lunch, whereas this guy was sitting alone. So I usually don't have, all the coaches, we usually don't have lunch first. We wait for the players to go. So what I saw was he was sitting alone in one corner in a very sort of contemplative mood. So I just went up to him and said, what do you want? Do you need anything? What are you thinking? So he said, Shrik, I just feel I need to have a bowl in the middle. I said, come on, great. And these are very good coaching moments for you when you grab that person one on one. It's a great coaching moment. So, and he started bowling. And he was saying, what do you think? What do you think I should do? And I just put the question back at him. I said, what do you think you should do? It's not about me telling you what you should do, but what are your reflections from the previous session? He said, I feel I'm trying too much and I'm not getting my pace right. So this is what he said. So I said, absolutely. On a wicket like this, don't think wickets. Try to bowl maiden overs. Nathan Lyon will get the wickets. Your job is to bowl maidens. So be bowl quick through the air. Don't give time. Bowl quick. Even that means your seam position goes a little square. It's okay. Australians have a big impetus on the seam position. They like the ball to go up and over.
They give more lips. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't sometimes work on turning tracks because it sits up. It sits up. It's too slow. Sometimes you've got to be quicker and the seam needs to be flatter. And it was that kind of wicket where you need to be quicker through the air. And I said, bowl with that kind of seam, quick through the air, bowl maiden overs. Just focus on, the pressure is not on you to get wickets. Take that pressure of getting wickets away from you and think that I have to bowl a maiden so that Nathan can get wickets from the other end. So have that kind of mindset. And he said, very interesting. I never thought about it this way. So this gives me clarity about my role. My role is not to get wickets, but my role is to bowl maidens. And then he stuck a purple patch, and then wickets suddenly started happening. So it was a very subtle change in mindset from saying, I'm going to try and get wickets to just coming and bowling accurate maiden overs, and then the wicket does the rest for him.
Let the other person take it. But that's
The wicket did
sure.
the rest.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many maidens he bowled, but he took 3 wickets in 1 over and then 6 wickets in 25 balls. That much I remember.
But the mindset with which he went into the session was to bowl accurate and hold one end up.
I mean, those are like how, as a coach, like what level of satisfaction did that give you as a coach? Like say, like somebody, like because they say that like coaches more than coaching, like you actually make the player think. Like some coaches work that.
Yeah,
so
definitely. It gives you immense satisfaction that you see instant results. But I, as a coach, cannot get carried away and get any credit for it because that's my job, and it was my job
Absolutely.
at that time to clear up his thinking. And the players in that level are under tremendous scrutiny and pressure. Sometimes the job of the coach is to take away that pressure from him, so that he can express himself in a better way. So it is not about, you're not doing anything great. He still has got to go out and bowl. So what you're doing is alleviating the pressure, soaking it in yourself, and give him the space and the freedom to work so that he can execute his skill. So that is what is the job of the coach. And I think that gave me a lot of satisfaction, no doubt. If I say no, I'll be lying.
Absolutely. Because not just that, before that, the Wands or the Wan or like any other Australian spinner who had come to India, they've always struggled and then they've always gone back as a very with a lot of dissatisfaction and disappointment. But since that 2017 series, first match, O'Keefe took 12 wickets. Next match, Lyon took an 8 for 50, but sadly Australia lost. And then 2017 series, Zampa played his first ODI. 2019 ODIs, Zampa also came and then performed in ODIs. So, like the Australian spinners, like they seem to be performing more in Asian conditions in the last 3-4 years. So, what is the reason for that? Is it just change in mentality and then keeping it simple and not trying too many things, or is it preparation? Is it more preparation?
I think good preparation. Australia has toured India a lot in the last few years, like a lot more frequently. We have these MRF trips. We do MRF trips every year. We come to India and we play in the subcontinent a lot more. And the onus has been on preparation, like you say. And I mean, some Indians are such good players of spin that they can demoralize you as a spinner in a very short span of time. But the trick or the key for a spinner is not to get demoralized. Stick to your process. If you're bowling a good ball and if you're able to hit that lane consistently, spin the ball, challenge his defense, and try and beat both edges, you're still in the contest. So, what maybe the Australian spinners have done in the past is they got rattled. They come like players like Sachin or Navjot Sidhu started it to Shane Warne. Just hit him outside the park every time.
You
And
can't do much.
that was great batsmanship. So it needed guts, and Indians are very gutsy when it comes to playing spin. They will take you on. But as a spinner, all the spinners, like even Graham Swan and Monty Panesar in that series when England won in India, you see what they did. They were they challenged the defense.
Simple.
And as
Yeah.
a spinner, if
They
you
just
can
stuck to their
challenge the defense in a test match, if you can keep challenging the defense, I think as a spinner, you're in the contest. And the wicket always gives you that little bit of help where you will not get in maybe other parts of the world. So it is about being consistent, it is about being patient, and it is about keeping belief in your skill. And I think this is something we Australians have emphasized. And I think Nathan also plays a great role because of his success, and he carries that message to the other spinners. More than me saying, the peer learning is so important. So Zamps and Lyon are very good among. They bowl very well in tandem with each other. So sort of message coming from me, message coming from Nathan. Zamps learns faster. So same with
Okay.
Ashton Agar, same with any Australian spinner. I think there is a common message, and that trickles down from the coaches, from the players. Steve Smith says the same thing because he's played so much IPL. He's faced Jadeja, he's faced Ashwin. So what is most hardest for you to face? When someone is accurate, when someone challenges your defense. So he says that when Jadeja challenges my defense, it is the toughest for me to play. So the message goes out to the bowler. David Warner says the same thing. So if everyone in the team are giving you similar messages, the learning becomes faster.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my next question is you were talking about Lyon. My next question is on him. So 2011 he made his debut five for obviously everybody remembers. But then even till or 2014 or 2015, whenever Australia toured outside the toured to Asia, the first thought that they had was, okay, Lyon or somebody else. So he had still struggled, and then from late 2015, 2016, he picked himself up. 2017, he took wickets in India, then went to Bangladesh. He took consecutive 5-wicket hauls, 6-wicket hauls. And then now, 2017, I think, if I'm not wrong, he was the highest wicket taker in test matches that year. Now, he's probably amongst there with, right there with the best spinners in the world. I mean, how great has this rise been, the Lions rise from a normal off spinner who always had one cloud of doubt over his head, and then he always had to worry about his place. Now he's probably one of the first names on the sheet.
I think the way the ball comes out of his hand, no one else has that ability in the whole world. The amount of spin he can impart at that pace is an unbelievable skill. So if our Indian spinners have to impart that much spin, we go slower. Whereas he can impart that much amount of revs, 2,100 and something revs, at the speed of 87, 88 kilometers an hour. So that is unbelievable skill. So for him, it has been just reinforcing that, and a lot of the way I worked with him is I now understand his best preparation. So a lot of homework as to how different batsmen have played against him. So what has he done very well against, say, Babar Azam, for example, or Kane Williamson, for example? What has he done well in the past? So it is for me to go to your Cricket D21 videos and study all the patterns. I watched almost each and every ball Nathan Lyon has bowled to Kane Williamson. Each and every ball Nathan Lyon has bowled to Babar Azam. I can give him breakdown as how much he has scored on the back foot compared to how much he scored on the front foot. What are the best fields he has had? Where is the ball gone? So how can we block that area? So all we are trying to do is block certain areas where he can still bowl his best ball. As a bowler, he doesn't have to change or he doesn't have to worry about anything rather than just bowling his best ball. His best ball is good enough to get anyone out. But what batsmen try to do is take him away from that best ball. And so, what as coaches we need to do is find ways that he can keep repeating his best ball. So, block scoring areas, have catching men at appropriate positions, lines. So, some people have struggled when he's got wider. Some people have struggled when he's bowled round the wicket. Some people have struggled like when he's bowled a straighter line. So, just from I've understood that for him, it is about just making him prepare against individual batters, how they've approached him, and so that we can just keep reiterating the message as to how. And he's a genius with the ball. If he does what he does best, he challenges the best of batsmen.
Yeah.
And
And probably
sorry, and
probably the beauty
also
of
to
it is
understand
simplicity.
his cue, and to also understand his cues, like what are the things he does when he's bowling really well. So keep him uh, in that. So in his preparation leading up to a big test series, he's always doing the things that he's always done, which when he's doing really well. So keep focus very simple for him, and I think his talent and his sort of skill does the rest.
Absolutely. Like as you said, like simplicity and then the preparation part of it. Like you can correct me if I'm wrong. On the before, I think Australia came to India in 2017. They set up one camp in UAE to replicate conditions, and then we hear stories about how Lion bowled like some thousand balls, 1,200 balls before he even played the first test match of the series in India. I mean, such preparation and like you said, like keeping it very simple. Like I trust my stock ball and that's what I'm going to do. So it's absolutely fascinating to hear about how Lion also keeps it very simple and all that. So it's excellent. So, and then this question we have to ask. We have spoken about the test, but we have not spoken about Ashes 2019. And you were right there. Like, how special was that moment? And then, like, especially that happening after 18 years. Uh, how special was it? Like, have you seen
I mean,
something more special than?
first of all, I never imagined in my wildest of dreams that I will coach in an Ashes series. So it is
Yeah.
unheard of for me. I've watched the Ashes from on TV, and for me it was a great 4 months because we had the World Cup before the Ashes, and it was extremely special to be part of the World Cup and followed by an Ashes series. It was emotionally very draining, but I think it's something that I will savor every minute all my life. So the whole journey that the team went through, and they had gone and visited Gallipoli, which is a sort of a war memorial in Turkey before going to the World Cup. So the right from that moment to how we wanted to how our World Cup journey, and then to immediately get over that disappointment of a World Cup semi-final loss, go into a big Ashes series against World Cup champions, and then to retain the Ashes away from Australia, I think was one of the highest achievements coming from where we came from.
Yeah.
I think very special.
The Headingley to Manchester, like losing in such, like losing such a match, and then going back to Manchester and almost experiencing something similar all over again. Like, how did the team pick themselves up after Headingley, and then what was the like how much satisfaction was there after Manchester? Like, how did
It was,
they pick yourself up? How did they
I
pick
think that story is very beautifully portrayed in the test in the document. If you see, uh, 73 runs to go, last wicket. We all in the dressing room thought we had won that test. But I remember Justin Langer was walking very, very sort of like he was restless, and he was saying, "Sri, you got to get Stokes out. Till the time Stokes get out, I'm not convinced that we can win this test match." And it so happened that he played a miraculous innings, and then it was very disappointing. It was shattering. And then we didn't speak much. The whole team didn't speak after that test. It was very quiet. We went out. We went back to our rooms, and it was a very quiet atmosphere in the dressing room. And the next day, when the night we got a text that we got a team walk at 9 a.m. in the morning. And then we turned up for the walk, but it was actually a meeting where we went through all the 73 runs ball by ball. And the coach was asking questions about what was our mindset, what was our strategy. If the same thing happened again, how would we react to the situation? So it was an amazing piece of coaching, which it was unimaginable for anyone to do. You lose a test match, and next day morning at 9 o'clock, you get a team meeting and you replay the whole sequence of events which you would never want to see in your life as an Australian cricketer.
Absolutely.
So he made the players suffer the ignominy of watching the whole partnership ball by ball. And I think that really hurt the players. And one thing I remember that we spoke about was next we had a side game against Derbyshire. Before the Manchester Test match, we had a side game against Derbyshire. And one of the strong messages that we got was we need to find a way to get 20 wickets again and get into the habit of winning. Sometimes we just go through the motions in side games. We just go play for fun, get practice, get what we need to get done as individuals, and then go into a test match. But we were very certain that we needed to get back into winning ways. So we wanted to get 20 wickets. So we finished that game in 2.5 days. We went to Derbyshire, and from Derbyshire we went to Manchester. And again, Steve Smith played the test match. Steve Smith missed out in Headingley. Steve Smith
The
didn't
third
play
test
that
match.
test. Yeah, so getting him back for the fourth test was, I think, great for us. He got a double 100, and the second innings he got an amazing 80. So I would rate that innings of 80 even higher than the double 100 because we were in a spot of bother. We were 30 for 3 or something in the second inning, and then he counter-attacked. So he got an 80 in like 70 balls or 75 balls. He counter-attacked, played the way he played against Archer and Broad. I think took the game away from England, and then I think he was one of the main reasons that we were able to come back and win that test at Old Trafford.
Absolutely, because that I still when the innings that you mentioned, the 80 that you mentioned, it has got very close shades of a Ricky Ponting innings that he played in Headingley in 2009. So 2009 as his fourth test match, Australia had to win to make it 1-1, and then like Ponting, what actually won that test match was the 80 odd that he scored in the first inning. So like talking about that, I think personally for me this Steve Smith innings which he played in Manchester second innings was, like you said, probably the best innings of that entire tour.
Nobody it takes a lot of guts again for a batsman to go and play the way he played, because it really, you have to stamp your authority. You have to be a champion, genius. Only very few people, like you say, Ricky Ponting or Sachin Tendulkar, people of that caliber can play such an innings under extreme pressure, and you know that you have a test match to win. So, I mean, that shows the character of the person as well.
Absolutely. Sridhar, just moving on to general questions. So, because there are some questions which I've been wanting to ask you for a very long time. You're barely in India, so we can't even meet you and ask. So now that
I'm always at your office. I'm always at your office when I'm in Chennai.
But you're so busy doing something else. Like we can't catch you only. So see that like you said. So we spoke about Lyon in Test matches, Zampa in limited overs in Australia's case. Even in India's case, Ashwin and Jadeja are doing it in Test matches, but in ODIs and T20s, Kohli wants Kuldeep and Chahal and all that. It's becoming clearer. So in Test matches, the only successful wrist spinners I can remember now is Yasir Shah, and then there are one very small players like Dom Bess or someone else for England. And
Dom Bess is an off spinner.
Yeah, sorry, not Dom Bess. Mason Crane.
Mason Crane played hardly.
Yeah, exactly. So there are very few wrist spinners. So it's all finger spinners. Every team has got a off spinner and left arm spinner. In ODIs and T20s, every team has got a leg spinner or a wrist spinner. Zampa, Adil Rashid, Kuldeep, Chahal, go to Pakistan, Shadab Khan. Everywhere you go, there is one. Even New Zealand have Ish Sodhi. So what is it like in Test matches? Finger spinners are dominating. In shorter formats, wrist spinners are dominating. What do you think is the reason behind this?
It's very simple. I think in Test matches you need control, and finger spinners give you control. Like you can't have a spinner going for 4 runs and over in a test match because the fast bowler at the other end can never attack.
Hmm.
So especially if you come from a non-Asian background, you need your fast bowlers to bowl attacking spells all the time. And for that, you need to have a spinner at the other end who gives you control. And only finger spinners give you. Even today, if you see, if India tours abroad, like Ashwin or Jadeja give you great control for a Shami or a Bumrah or a Nishant Sharma to bowl the attacking. If the spinner goes for 4, suddenly the mindset of the fast bowler from the other end is, I have to bowl control. So they get into a negative frame of mind. And then the partnership builds. So for the fast bowler to have his attacking mindset, the spinner has to give you control from one end. And that is why I think that Jadeja or Ashwin or Nathan Lyon are great because they give you that control. Graham Swan was excellent. He gives you that control. He allowed Anderson and Broad and Flintoff to attack from the other
Yeah.
end. And then when the wicket starts to dry up and the wicket starts to play a few tricks, the spinner comes into the fore. He gets with the ball to turn, and because he's naturally got the control, he becomes more potent and dangerous. And then the pace bowlers turn themselves into a defensive role. They bowl with short mid wicket, they bowl with short square leg, they bowl a stump line, they bowl very defensive. And then the roles are reversed in the second innings. Whereas in the first innings, whereas the leg spinner, you see, you have to have a sweeper cover, you have to have a long off, you have to have deep mid wicket. So easy to milk a fingers or wrist spinner
Where
for
is the
3 runs
control?
and over.
Yeah. Correct.
So, and you can't have men around the bat. And one thing that you have to do as a spinner in Test cricket is have the ability to have men around the bat. If there are no men around the bat, eases the pressure. Great batsmen in Test cricket, they'll find a way to score. But why Ashwin, Jadeja or Lyon are great is because they have the ability to keep having men round the bat. Even if you're 200 for one, you still get a chance bat caught it shortly. And they have the ability to do that. Whereas a wrist spinner may not. Yasir Shah, if you say his strength is his control. Amazing, hardly bowls a bad ball as a leg spinner, Yasir Shah. So that I think is one of the defining factors in Test cricket. When it comes to ODI and T20 cricket, I think why wrist spinners are successful is because of one is their ability to spin the ball both ways. Two,
Both ways.
under lights, very, very difficult to pick a wrist spinner. Under lights. So for a new batter coming in, under lights, even if it is an Indian batsman facing, say, a Zampa, it is very hard under lights to pick the revolution. So you don't know which way the ball is going. So you bide yourself a bit of time as a spinner. You get the 3 to 4 balls that you can bide as a spinner under lights. And so that is a huge advantage for a wrist spinner when it comes to playing in ODI. White ball, ODI, T20, the wickets are flat, they are white, the color of the ball is white, coming out of the hand from lights. For a new bat, takes about 10 to 12 balls for any batter
Significant
to get you. Yeah, so get used to that light and get used to picking the ball from the hand. So that is why wrist spinners, I think, thrive in one day. Whereas if you see in the World Cup in England, wrist spinners did not have a great time because in England no matches were played under lights. In England, all the games were day games.
It's a very, very interesting point, Sriram. Very, very interesting point.
In day games, I mean, I think still because of their ability to spin the ball both ways, they get away with it. But the difference is not as stark as when you play under lights. So I think the lights is a big factor to wrist spin in ODI and T20 cricket. Again, if more and more day-night test starts to happen with a pink ball, you might see the rise of wrist spin in Test cricket because it's harder to pick the ball under lights in Test matches with the pink ball. So with the pink ball, it could be a different story going forward. But red ball, normal Test match control, white ball, ability to pick the ball from the hand. That's interesting.
Absolutely. Very, 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 very well said. So very interesting point there. Like, I think not many people would have, like, to be very honest, I never thought along these lines. I am sure like a lot of us would have learned something from these points. Okay, another question here. So, finger spinners, no? So, like, even someone like who's as proven as Ashwin, sometimes people accuse Ashwin of trying too much. and then a lot of other finger spinners as well. Like they try to bowl like two carom balls in an over or three carom balls in an over. So if you were a coach, if you're coaching a teenage leg spinner right now, so what would you actually encourage him to do? Would you tell him to bowl more variations, or would you tell him to fine tune his top delivery first?
I think variations are overrated. So Ashwin is a genius. I have worked with him in Kings 11. The amount of balls that he can bowl, he's got a very tennis ball background. So he's got a lot of tricks with his fingers, and he's got someone who's got such strong fingers, so and long fingers. If you see his palm, he's got very long fingers. So he's got the ability to control whatever variations he bowls very accurate. So what other spinners don't do is in their quest to bowl variations, they lose out on their line and length, and they bowl a lot of loose balls. Whereas Ashwin or whoever bowls a lot of variation, they hardly bowl a loose ball. So I think for a spinner, it's mandatory that you spin the ball. Spinning the ball is massive. You have to have the ability. If you have the ability to spin it both ways as a wrist spinner, excellent. But if you're a finger spinner, I think to get your revs on the ball, get control over line and length, these two are mandatory. And then variations comes with experience. Variations may not be very obvious. Even subtle variations are very good, like slightly slower, slightly quicker. So even the odd ball going straight. So it comes with experience, and it comes with the more you play. But I think for a spinner, mandatory to first spin the ball and have control.
Absolutely.
What is control? Control is again not 1 minute. Control is also not about just bowling line and length. Control is able to bowl what you want to bowl. Like you visualize one particular ball.
Exactly.
To be able to execute that is control.
Absolutely.
So, and that is where I think Ashwin or Nathan Lyon are very good, or Jadeja. They can execute the ball they want.
Sriram, one of our viewers is asking this question, so which I myself have thought at some point. So he's asking, why are you like you're saying more the ball rotates, the more turn it gives, but like we hear all coaches or players or commentators say you're imparting more revs on the ball. I mean, so can you actually tell viewers like what is imparting more revs mean? And like the ball is rotating, but what is imparting more revs mean?
Revs is the number of revolutions it has in a minute, right? So the number of times the ball rotates on its axis in a minute. So like you can measure it. You've got instruments that measure it. So the Shane Warne has got about 2,600 revs a minute. Nathan Lyon is 2,200 revs a minute. Ashwin is 2,100 or something. Jadeja is 1,900, 2,000. So the best spinners,
so it's the
best
revs
finger spinners, the number of revolutions the ball has in a minute. And it is calculated in a minute or per second, whatever. In England, it is calculated per second, whereas in Australia, it is calculated per minute. But it is not necessarily the time it takes from your hand to reaching the batsman. It is the average amount of revolution. It might take less than a second for the ball to reach the batsman, but it is counted as the average number of revolutions the ball has in 1 minute or in 1 second. In England, it's 48 or 52 revs per second or something, whereas in a minute it is 2,100. So multiply that by 60.
Absolutely. Sriram, we'll just take one more.
Was that clear? Was that clear?
We got it. Yeah, we got that. That's Sriram, we'll just take one last fan question. It's from Burj. It's from Khalifa. So he's saying, how impactful has Justin Langer been ever since he arrived after South Africa 2018, and how have the other coaches or the player perceived his approach and his attitude towards the game?
Sorry, repeat that question, please. Sorry, I didn't get it. Repeat that question.
Sorry, Sriram, can I repeat the question? Yeah. So one of our viewers is asking, how impactful has Justin Langer been since his arrival after South Africa 2018? And how have the other coaches, the assistant coaches or the batting bowling coaches, and the players have perceived his approach or attitude towards the game?
I think unbelievable results are there for it to speak, so we don't have to say anything. What he has done for the team
Absolutely,
in terms of is remarkable. I think what he was very big on is establishing a good team culture, to good team environment, good emphasis on the right behavioral patterns. Right, what do we stand for? What does playing for Australia mean? What does that? How can we bring back the pride in the Australian fans? So I think his messaging was more around the culture, and then he came to the skill part, and he's a hard taskmaster when it comes to skill. I think the way he played the game, how gutsy he was, how hardworking he was, how much passion he has for Australia, everything comes to the fore. And I think as assistant coaches, we learn a lot from his leadership approach. I think I've learned a lot personally from him in his leadership style, how he's all inclusive. He's able to, get everybody involved in the thinking process. So he would, in his ability to delegate authority, his ability to trust people, to sort of do their roles. I think great leadership skills and great leadership lessons from Justin Langer. And I think the players have started to really embrace the approach. And I think it's an environment where people enjoy each other's company, contribute to each other's success, and the bigger picture is what, like, making Australians proud on and off the field is the proud motto of the team. I think so. I think that's something he has achieved tremendously in a very short span of time.
Absolutely wonderful to hear that, Srinam. Srinam, thanks a lot. Thanks for giving us your time. I think we actually learned quite a lot of stuff from today's interview. There are some people demanding one part two also, so tell me whenever you're free next, we can do part two.
Part two, for
There are
what?
3 people at least who are demanding part two of this interview.
Oh, interesting. Excellent. Nice.
Absolutely. We learned a lot, Sriram, today. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. Lovely
And
talking to
wherever
you.
you are, please stay safe.
Same to you. And,
Thank
look
you,
after
Sriram.
yourself.
Stay safe. Yeah.
Thank you. Take care.